We hope you enjoy traveling Wormhole Express Airlines. Your in-flight movie today is a little confection from our friends in Japan called Prince of Space. Sayonara!
We watch Season 8, Episode 16, Prince of Space.
It's the one where chicken people come from outer space and a boot black will save us all.
Oh, but first, some follow-up.
Yes, first some follow-up. First, though, actually, before follow-up, poke. I'm poking Charlotte right now.
Stop!
We're in the same room. I have schlepped all the way out to the West Coast, the best coast, to hang out with Charlotte and record this episode. And I don't know. It's been great, although it's exhausting as it's the first time I've left my house in almost 3 years.
I know, but we're in my house, so I didn't have to leave my house at all, which is so convenient for me.
Yes, also there are many kittens around us right now, so maybe we'll...
This happened at least once with you and Beth and Adam in some configuration, right?
Yes, I think eagle-eyed listeners can find, I believe at the very beginning, at the cold open of one of the episodes, I talk about how there are substitute kittens around me. And that was being recorded just in this very house many years ago.
I meant that you and Beth and Adam had physically been in the same location when you recorded at one point in time. It is true. It's just a show has been filmed in my...
Yep.
Has been recorded in my house before.
Yes. So the Manos episode, Adam and Beth and I were all in the same room. Adam and I did several episodes where we were in the same room together. And we did an episode where Adam and Beth were hosting, but Beth was in the same room as me for reasons. I don't think I've ever done a one-on-one with Beth in the same room, but we tried a few times, but COVID got in our way.
COVID.
Yeah.
God, it ruined everything.
It's no fun. Let's get to follow-up.
Okay,
Last time, Charlotte, you were wondering whether any of our sweet, sweet listeners listened to It's Just a Show while they were going to beddy-bye time. And devoted listener Ella wrote in to say that while she does listen to us while she's having acupuncture treatments.
I thought that was super interesting. I can't imagine listening to anything while getting an acupuncture treatment, let alone the melodious voices of Chris and Charlotte, but...
Poke.
Who am I?
Poke. I've never had acupuncture treatment. I don't know what it's like. It sounds pokey. I don't know, maybe I'd be fine with it. I have no idea. But she says it chills her right out and puts her in a great state of mind.
Wow, I'm pleased that we do that for people.
We're doing half the acupuncture work.
I know, right? We should be getting a cut of that sweet, sweet acupuncture poke. No.
Sweet acupuncture. Give me some of that sweet poke.
Yes,
I'm in it for the poke.
I am totally an expert in acupuncture, so here we are.
We also heard from devoted listener Jess, who said that Salute Your Shorts was her favorite, even though you'd never heard of her favorite. How could you do this to our listeners?
I can't know about everything at all times. Fortunately, I hope Jess has forgiven me since.
Well, she refers to it as a dumb and fantastic show, and she pointed us to a character named Donkey Lips.
Fantastic name.
And to what she described as, quote, one of the creepiest characters in Nickelodeon history, Zeke the Plumber.
My response to that was Nickelodeon has had a lot of characters that could be in contention for creepiest in Nickelodeon history. But then she put a picture in our Slack and hands down, Jess, you're right. That is the most convincing evidence I have ever seen for creepiest character in Nickelodeon history.
Very creepy. Also big news is that while we're recording this a bit late and it'll be released even later, we did just celebrate Donald Pleasence Day.
You guessed it.
You guessed it indeed. We did celebrate it on our live stream. As you may know, some of us here at the Megaphonic Network stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/MegaphonicFM. And Friday nights we tend to do random assorted Jackbox or trivia type games. And sometimes we play the Donald Pleasence game.
Woo!
Where our exciting contestants need to come up with things that are as popular to search for in a category as Donald Pleasence is.
As popular as Donald Pleasence?
Can you think of a country of the world that is searched as often as Donald Pleasence is?
Ooh. Namibia? Is that as popular as Donald Pleasence?
Let me check. Over the past 12 months around the world, the country of Namibia was significantly more popular than Donald Pleasence.
Wow!
Good job, people of Namibia, but I think
Excellent.
that's a little disrespectful on this of all days.
Ah, well, some of us celebrate Donald Pleasence in our own ways.
That's true. And there's even a reference to Donald Pleasence in today's episode that we're looking at when they make a joke about Blofeld that goes a little something like this.
Ah, Mr. Bond. Bach.
Good morning, gentlemen.
When Phantom of Crankor turns around and starts doing his evil speech, because he's such an evil guy.
He's so evil.
So evil.
So evil.
All right, well, anyway, that's a bunch of follow-up that we had for today, but now we should switch over to talking about today's very special episode, Prince of Space.
Prince of Space!
This time we watched Season 8, Episode 16, Prince of Space. Wally is a nice guy. He's a humble shoeshine boy. But he has taken in 2 orphans, Mickey and Kimmy, and so no wonder everyone seems to like him, including the eminent scientist Dr. Mackin. Dr. Mackin has developed a new and very efficient rocket fuel. So efficient, in fact, that aliens from the planet Crankor are going to invade to take the rocket fuel. Now, they offer Earth limitless prosperity in exchange, but if Earth does not accept limitless prosperity, devastation! The destruction of major cities! Oh no! Well, the aliens from Crankor are humanoid, but they have these large chicken noses, which is pretty menacing, and their leader, Ambassador, or sometimes Dictator Phantom, has a real phenomenal mustache and a great evil guy laugh. Who will save the Earth from Phantom and his henchmen? Why, none other than Prince of Space! The invaders' weapons are useless against this caped and masked crusader for some reason. And so, the movie gets bogged down in an interminable number of set pieces where the invaders have dastardly plans that get foiled by Prince of Space. In the end, the invaders kidnap Dr. Mackin and a few of the other scientists, and they fly them to the Phantom's home on Crankor, which is guarded by a giant who looks kind of like Matt Lucas covered in mashed potatoes. Prince of Space follows them there and ultimately saves the day. But one question remains. Who is Prince of Space? Who has saved Dr. Mackin and the Earth and Mickey and Kimmy and all of that? Why, it was none other than our old friend Wally, the shoeshine boy. What a nice guy. The end.
Meanwhile, on the Satellite of Love, sometimes horseplay between kids gets a little rough, and sometimes someone gets hurt, and it's not anyone's fault or anything, but someone needs to tell us the full story of all the things that happened, and Crow got hurt, and he's dressed as a bear, and Tom is a dog, Mike calms the bots down so they're ready to go back to playing. Whew. Pearl calls from the VW microbus to let Mike know that Bobo has to go to the bathroom. What a weird call to make. But as Bobo is not going because he knows you're looking, he gets sucked into a wormhole. Pearl follows, drags the Satellite of Love with her, and comedy ensues for the rest of the host sketches. First, the fabric of time is warped. Tom is a few seconds ahead of Mike, Mike is many seconds ahead of Crow, and GPC is ahead of all 3 of them. The conversation is a real brain buster, but in the end, Tom gets the chicken puppet. Next, the physical makeup of our host is changed. Mike is now a bot, but more like a dummy bot. I mean, a puppet dummy? Is there a better word for that? Tom and Crow cannot stop laughing, as taking dummy bot Mike seriously is just impossible. Dummy Mike continues into the theater, showing the fabric of time and space extends beyond movie sign. Finally, the Satellite of Love itself is affected by the wormhole. No longer are our companions in a metal dog bone, but in a bright, sunny forest glade. It's as if all three of them are the away team who have beamed down onto the planet's surface, and so far they haven't encountered any signs of intelligent life, but surely imminent danger is just around that bend in the path. As the movie wraps, space and time seem to have come back together on the satellite of love. Mike is back, the SOL is back, time is flowing consistently for everyone aboard. But with Bobo still missing, Pearl and Brain Guy find themselves in Roman times? A toga-wrapped couple demand their capture, and I can only assume the next episode has Steve Reeves and an epic lion wrestling match, or a naval battle in the flooded Colosseum. I can't wait! What do you think, sirs?
I mean, Hercules wasn't in Roman times.
Okay, I know, but how many times can we talk about Maximus the Merciful? You know, like, it can't always be about Russell Crowe.
I don't think we've ever talked about Maximus the Merciful in this podcast. So.
Maybe you haven't, but I have.
All right. Well, welcome back to our trek through Season 8. What did you think of Prince of Space?
I had a really hard time with this one. The movie was so boring. It was so hard. I mean, I've watched Coleman Francis movies with you.
Yes.
And this was more boring than that.
No.
Yes, it was. It was horrible.
Nobody
really
in any
hard.
Coleman Francis movie is wearing a chicken nose and going,
No, they're just glowing and walking through the moon landscape, which is more exciting than 90% of what happens inside of this movie. The movie was a hard slog for me. I didn't really feel like their riffing livened it up enough for me to keep me going. I appreciated the host segments. They were lots of fun traveling through the wormhole, but they didn't, often the times the host segments are something that give me something to hold on to during the movie, or they comment on something that happened in the movie, and it makes it easier to go back in. And because those two were completely different storylines, there wasn't really something to hook me back into Prince of Space. So I had a rough time with it. There were a couple of riffs, I think, that were funny enough, and certainly all the clucking noises they did. Cluck, 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 that was fun, but this was a rough one for me, Chris. What did you think?
Well, we'll get to what I thought in a second, but I want to say there was a poll that they asked fans of MST3K as part of the campaign to kickstart it for the Netflix seasons. And how do you think this episode did? What rank do you think this got?
The fact that you're even asking me means I'm completely wrong, doesn't it? I mean, oh no, it didn't do well, did it?
This was the 15th most popular episode of MST3K ever.
You can't be serious.
Welcome to the most exciting part of being a host of It's Just a Show, disliking a beloved sci-fi episode.
Well, thank you everyone for welcoming into this fantastic honor. I can't believe it. What am I missing? I mean, I understand that I am a different person from other fans of Mystery Science Theater 3000. Turns out I'm a different person from you, Chris. Who knew? But what am I missing inside of this show? I just couldn't get into it.
I don't know. My response was a little more positive than yours, but not much. There's a lot about the movie that I like. I like the costuming, and Wally seems like a nice guy, you know.
Sure.
He wears a fun hat.
He does wear a jaunty cap.
And I think that although it suffers from being cropped to pieces, that it is, not a poorly shot film as a cinematography goes, and it's not a muddy print or anything, although it is a little hard to watch for some reason that I could never quite put my finger on. But I think you're right that the middle especially is completely boring, as we have a bunch of scenes that go nowhere where the kids are being kidnapped. No, they're fine. And the Prince of Space is there, and, your weapons are useless against me, but they shoot anyways, and it's useless, and then they get away, but then it just keeps going. Like, there's nothing. This is terrible. This is very reminiscent of the terrible 80s kids shows that I liked when I was that age, where stuff happens, and there's no rhyme or reason to it, and it's super boring.
I don't understand, though, because I liked those 80s cartoons. I'm a kid of the 80s, too.
Yeah.
And I didn't find them nearly this dull. I don't know maybe it just caught me at a bad time. Like, many MST3K fans can't be all wrong, but I don't know.
You'd be surprised.
Well, and it's okay for me to have a different opinion. I understand. However, it just makes me feel like I must have missed something that was really charming about this episode, or that was, extremely funny, or maybe there's just a love of the outside host segments that carried in for other people into the movie. I just found it so Prince of Space is going to say that the weapons are completely not going to harm him. And then they shoot the weapons and it doesn't harm him. And then it happens again 2 minutes later. And then it happens in a cement building 2 minutes later. And then it happens in a field 3 minutes after that. And then there's some shoes being shined and people are reading the newspaper. And what? What? Why?
I don't know, but I will say that they quickly made bumper stickers that read something to the effect of, "I like it very much." And they sold like hotcakes.
Okay.
It's a cute line. It really didn't need to be repeated as many times as Mike repeated it. The things about your weapons don't work on me, that didn't need to be repeated as often as it was by Mike and the Bots. There's a lot of hammering jokes home again and again and again, and it's a bit unfortunate.
I liked the 3 lines, that they were mocking some of the lines inside of the movie, and it would be 3 sentences that did not at all seem to fit together, but they were said in quick succession as if there was no punctuation between the 3 of them, and they did that several times through the movie. That was lots of fun.
Yeah, that was very nice. There are some nice things in the episode. I laughed a few times, and I kind of would like to see them do this episode again, and maybe leave out quite as much anti-Japanese racism sentiment stuff. There's a lot of, here's the thing I know about Japan that I find weird and off-putting. Jellied foods.
Fermented fish.
Fermented fish. All this stuff. It's like, well, okay. This is more about you than it is about them now, isn't it?
I don't know as I would want to see this rift again. I don't know what they would do differently. And maybe I should see it rift in a different way. I also have to say, I watched this by myself. And because we're in the same location, I also got to watch it with you. And there were lots of things that you brought up while we were watching it that I didn't notice when I watched it the first time. Like all of the uniforms that had a Z on them. I didn't notice that they all had different little numbers next to it. And it was fun to be watching the movie and looking for the different numbers and stuff. And so maybe what I really miss is that experience of watching the show with several friends and everybody noticing different things and sharing those things. And that's part of what I want the riffing to do for me, right?
Yeah.
That the riffing is something like being in the room with other people, pointing things out in the movie and reacting to things that are in the movie. And it is a genuine thing to be reacting to a movie that takes place in another culture and trying to remember things that you know about that culture. However, it would be nice if they weren't so steeped in stereotypes.
Yes.
I suppose is where I
or
would go
relevant. So many of the anti-Japanese things that they were saying had nothing to do with what was going on screen. I burnt my tofu, Mike says, I believe, at some point, when nothing is on fire, nothing is being burnt, there's no food in the scene. It makes no sense at all. But it's just an arbitrary making fun of people for eating tofu, which, cool.
Sure. Well, as a vegetarian, I'm sure you took that one a little more personally than I did.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Hey, did you know this was originally a Japanese TV series that went on for 49 episodes with like 4 major story arcs.
All 4 of which are represented in some way in this movie?
No, I think not, although I haven't watched it. for heaven's sake.
49 episodes is a lot. It doesn't seem like there's a really compelling premise here. I mean, does Crankor continue to be an adversary inside of the series? Do you know? Or are there other chicken people who come to try and dominate the world? Do we get an origin story background for where the Prince of Space came from?
Oh, I doubt we get that. Although, who knows? We might. Again, I haven't seen it. All I know is that they made these episodes and then they made 2 movies that were each an hour long and released 1 week after the other. So it was kind of serialized.
Okay.
Barely. And that's what we're watching. We're watching an edited into 1 movie version of that, which means that there's about 30 minutes that we didn't get to see because it's not in the English language edit.
If it's 2 movies, does that mean that there's supposed to be 2 plot lines happening?
No, I think it's dramatic conclude. I think it's part 1 and then it's part 2 and then you stick around, come back next week to see it. It's like it's a serial, but it's an hour long.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And would this have been something you experienced inside of a theater, or would this have been something you saw on TV?
These were theatrical movies that were being made, yep. And it has a different actor playing Prince of Space, or Planet Prince. Is it as obvious
that it's a different actor as, say, the Zombie Nightmare Fiasco, or...
I haven't seen it. There's only so much I've been able to find out about this, and there's only so much I wanted to know about this movie. But just the idea that this, even before MST3K got its hands on it, this is an even shorter version of what originally was seen. And wow, do I not want to sit through an extra half hour of this nonsense?
Who knows? Maybe the extra half hour really tied the story together in some sort of way.
Maybe. In the TV version, they didn't list the actor playing the Planet Prince. They just put a question mark at his name in the credits. Because he was mysterious and masked, and who knew what his real identity was?
Oh, he could be anyone.
Yeah.
Even the Shoeshine Boy.
I just thought that was kind of interesting. It could be the Shoeshine Boy. I liked the Shoeshine Boy. He seemed nice. He had nice guy energy at the very beginning and throughout, even when he was dealing with the aliens, politely telling them that their weapons were useless against him and reminding them, but being very patient, a good parent.
Don't waste your energy on this.
Exactly.
You need to be able to get home again.
You can cry all you want, but you're not getting ice cream.
Exactly. Unless, of course, you're over at like Dr. Mackin's house, and then he and his wife will give you all the ice cream you want, and you can go look at the telescopes outside, and you can watch the TV, and they'll talk about your adopted dad.
Dr. Mackin spoiled those kids.
He did.
And then left them. We've got wormholes in this episode. Not in the movie.
Not in the movie.
But in the episode.
Well, to my knowledge, not in the movie. Maybe it happened in that half hour we didn't see.
It's true. In the movie, the alien planet of Crankor is 500,000 miles away from the Earth. 500,000 of your Earth miles away. Which would put it just twice as far away as the moon is. Which seems not very far for a mysterious dark planet.
Yeah, although there isn't really much going on that planet. I can see why Crankor and his cronies want to come to Earth. There's just some little mountainy things going on and a super big robot guy.
There's only like 24 of them as far as we can tell, though, so...
It's true.
They can stretch out. I don't know. Anyway, wormholes. Our friends here pop into a wormhole following Bobo, who wants a little privacy while peeing, and who can blame him?
I guess.
Wormholes. So the idea behind wormholes is that they are holes made by worms in apples. No, they are these theoretical constructs that connect one bit of space-time to another bit of space-time, a kind of little shortcut through the universe. And scientifically, they might exist.
Sure.
The math, the physics, it all works out. These could be real.
Could be real.
We've never encountered them, but we think they could exist. We think we could even make artificial ones.
Yeah, but given the way that movies have used artificial wormholes or used existing wormholes, it doesn't really seem like going through a wormhole is going to be all that great of a choice for us.
Oh no, Stephen Hawking has argued that we might be able to make traversable ones. And movies may be getting this wrong. Certainly, there's no sign that wormholes would be acting like they do in today's episode in terms of mucking up with time and causing alternate realities to collapse onto each other. They might zip you from one universe to another.
Sure.
But they're not necessarily going to cause multiple things to happen at once inside the wormhole before you get out the other side and everything's fine again.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, so the wormhole movie that comes to my mind immediately is Event Horizon.
Okay, I have not seen this one, surprise, surprise.
Okay, so Sam Neill, Lawrence Fishburne, these are two of the actors that are inside of it. And I don't know if this is technically a wormhole because what they're doing is they are collapsing time and space to move from one point in the universe to another one instantaneously. However, of course, they go through a dark side of time in between there. And when they go through that dark side, they, have evil things occur and, flesh gets stripped off of bones and people speak Latin. It's not okay, Chris.
People speak Latin's fine.
Yeah, not when they say save yourselves from hell or whatever it is that they say.
I guess.
Save yourself from eternal torment. Not the phrase that I want said out loud to me as I'm traveling through a wormhole.
Yes.
While being tortured horrifically.
I'm trying to remember because the movie that I think of is Stargate.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I don't remember if there's a lot of wormhole traveling business going on, but I saw it back in the 90s when it was in second run theaters. Did we see it together? I can't remember.
I don't think that we did. Although, I'm sure we've seen many freaky James Spader movies, and I do have a great love of the Kurt Russells, so Stargate.
Yeah.
Kind of a good choice.
Well, I either saw it with you or with some other friend of ours. But either way, I wouldn't have chosen to go see it. But somebody dragged me along to see it.
Why not? It's about nerdy people who are decoding languages. That seems like your bag.
Yeah, you'd think.
Yeah. And just because there's the actor who plays one of the main characters in The Crying Game also being an Egyptian god / pharaoh is no reason to not see that movie.
Yes, Jay Davidson is in it, and he and his Egyptian boy toys all look fabulous.
They do.
But
Can confirm.
But I don't know. I don't know.
And James Spader gets given a wife for his translating. It's really weird. A child bride. Not even, it's just, here's the daughter of my family. Thanks for staying in my home. You're married now. It's weird.
I don't remember any of that, which shows how normalized it was in 1994.
Oh my God.
That didn't even make me go, wait a minute.
It made me go, wait a minute.
Well, perhaps so. I'm not saying everybody was normalized to it.
I feel like the child bride stuff didn't come up when it translated into a television show.
I never watched the television show, though I had plenty of friends who were deep into it.
Oh, I enjoyed the television show more than the movie, I think.
But the wormhole IP that I care most about is, once again, taking us back to the world of video games, a little game called Portal.
I've never played Portal. What's the game about?
This is ridiculous. Portal is one of the greatest achievements of mankind.
There are so many things that mankind has achieved. You're going to have to make a real good argument for this, Chris.
Portal is a fantastic game. It's in which you wake up and you are a subject inside of a testing facility in which they're working on all sorts of...
Secret of NIMH style?
Not Secret of NIMH style. They're not particularly working on your brains, but it will lead to your death. And it's sort of gone rogue. The sort of AI running the place has gone rogue and just likes to...
I personally have not gone rogue yet.
No. Well, you do try to escape.
Okay.
While you try to escape GLaDOS, the computer that is desperately trying to keep you tested. Yep.
Really?
It's an acronym. I forget what it stands for, but it's great. And GLaDOS's voice is fabulous as she just encourages you to test and test away. And what you're testing are these puzzle rooms where you're given a gun that shoots two sides of a portal, a wormhole, and which you can walk through or jump through or fall through. And there's all sorts of really fun physics things, like you can put a portal in the ceiling and a portal on the floor, jump through, and then get a lot of momentum going, so you're going really, really fast. And then while you're doing that, you shoot it so that you plunge through the ceiling and then come out of a tilted wall, and then you can arc yourself over a giant pit and make your way to the exit. It's very clever, very satisfying, very short game, the original one. You can probably finish it in an hour, especially if you've
So do you
done it
have
before.
2 shots? Like your first shot opens a window and your second shot is where you'll come through?
Yeah, there's like an orange and a teal
So
shot.
that's why when you're falling, you can make another shot and it'll change where you're going through? Oh, okay.
You have to remember which one
Which
you're going
one's which?
which one's which, or otherwise you'll just splat on the floor.
Which could be awkward. I could see that. Yeah.
It happens many times. But you've got these fancy boots that allow it so that you don't crush your legs as you fall. It's very nice.
Fancy boots.
Very
that
fancy
sounds
boots.
awesome.
There was a sequel to it, Portal 2, which sort of dove into the lore. You get to explore through the history of the site, and it's incredibly well written. It's incredibly funny. It's really satisfying gameplay, and it's not like it's a 3D game, but it's a 3D
But
game,
it doesn't make you ill.
and I was able to navigate it, unlike
Nice.
Skyrim, where I walk into walls and can't seem to get out of corners. And it's just incredibly satisfying, and it doesn't require like hair trigger reflexes or anything. You can sit and think and figure
That's
out how
good,
the puzzles
because I gotta say, as an old person, hair trigger reflexes sort of not gonna help me inside of a video game because I don't have them anymore.
Exactly.
And I didn't need them for Dr. Mario until I got to like level 20, so
Oh, we have to get you to play Portal. Oh, man. I did get to show you Katamari the other day.
That's true. That was really exciting to be able to follow up with that from our last episode.
It's good. It's a good game.
It is. It's lots of fun. And as you said, the King of All Cosmos is on point. Fabulous.
Well, speaking of all things Japanese, at some point during this episode, Tom is feeling a bit inspired by some of the scenery.
How could he not be, except I wasn't?
Yes. Well, I mean, he does sort of indicate that. His poem goes, "A stand of cedars, a spaceship is taking off, and I am tired."
Aww.
And then he turns to his companions and says, "It's a haiku."
Do you often spontaneously spout haiku yourself, Chris?
No, I don't. Well, maybe I do. I don't go around counting everything I say.
See, well, no, I don't. Well, maybe I do. No, you're really
That's
not going to
not-
make it with
that's
that
not
one. Although
really
that
how
would
it
be a
works.
fabulous beginning of a haiku.
So what do you know about haiku?
About all I know about it is, of course, that it is a poem structure that has 5 syllables on the first line, 7 syllables on the second line, and 5 syllables on the closing line, and that it is Japanese in origin. But I'm sure that you can fill in some more details on that.
It's true. And in fact, I can even correct you because that's wrong.
What? Come on, it's the only thing I know.
So
All right,
it's
so
not
wrong.
it's not 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables. It's 5 on is the Japanese word. Morai is what we tend to call it in English.
Mm-hmm.
Japanese has vowels of different lengths. So the city in Japan, which we in English tend to call Osaka,
Mm-hmm.
is more accurately pronounced Osaka. And the O is twice as long as the 2 A's are.
Mm.
So that in a haiku would count for 4 Osaka, even though it is 3 syllables.
Mm-hmm.
So we're counting lengths of vowels, not syllables. And that doesn't translate into English because our sense of what a long vowel is has nothing to do with how long you say the vowel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Great. So that's the whole thing. We miss out on some of the musicality from that. And of course, there's some other structures. The other big things about haiku traditionally are that they need to indicate a season somehow.
Oh.
And there also needs to be a word which is called a kireji, or cutting word, which is sort of a grammatical function that doesn't really translate into English. But basically, one of the lines needs to end with one of these traditional words that don't necessarily mean much, but do add a sense of poetry to the whole process.
But these are words that you would only recognize in the original language.
Yes, they're words that are specifically grammatically Japanese.
There is no English equivalent of them.
You could imagine if we had something where we said something like, Tokyo, oh, and that indicated that this was all now very poetic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Not just Tokyo.
So that's
Tokyo. Oh.
that's what we've got. Haiku as its own independent poetry form, as I understand it, I am no expert in this, but sort of emerges in the Edo era in 17th century Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Most famously, sort of the old school poet associated with haiku is a guy named Basho.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got a very famous poem about a frog in a pond that you may have heard of.
I have, yes.
One translation would go something like, "Old pond, frog leaps in, waters sound." But I've seen many, many, many different translations of this poem. It's a fun one because you just got the idea of, well, there's a pond, a frog jumping, kerplonk. That's what you got to get across. In fact, I've got an entire book that was written by a poet. I think I have 2 books, actually, that were written by different poems, each of which are just doing variations on this poem.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the Basho variations. I'll put links in the show notes for them. They're great. It's a fun poem to explore and think about. Haiku continued being popular in Japan, and eventually it started coming over to the West, as we like to call ourselves. 1949, there was a book by R.H. Blythe that translated a bunch of haiku, and that really got its foot off, but there were...
Translated haiku and kept some of that structure?
Yeah, or it
Because I'm
talked
wondering
about some of the
when
structure.
we started talking about the structure as syllables instead of vowel lengths, and at some point in time that translation had to be made.
Exactly. There were earlier people bringing it over to Western languages, including somebody named Harukichi Shimoi, who translated haiku into Italian, which is where Ezra Pound found it.
Of course.
And then he started writing some very imagistic poems, including one of his most famous poems, which is called "In a Station of the Metro." And it goes, "The apparition of these faces in the crowd, petals on a wet black bough." It's very nice. Has nothing to do with syllable count. But it does retain that terseness and that sense of each line having its own sort of identity, and then some disjunct connection between the lines that is more suggestive than explanatory, and also some sense of seasonality in it. So he took those important things. But we got really into the counting syllables.
Yeah, well, I mean, if I'm thinking about when I might have learned about haiku inside of school, I think I would have learned about it really early on, maybe like even elementary school, right? So that whole idea that it's a very simple short poem where you just have 5, 7, 5, and you have to create an image, you have to create a story inside of that very short space, is far more accessible than some other poetic conventions, right? And so you can talk about it with a 3rd grader. You can talk about it with a 4th grader. And a 3rd grader and a 4th grader can possibly create some haiku that are going to be interesting enough to read. So, as opposed to the tortured poems that I would have written while listening to The Cure as a high school student, right? There's kind of maybe a magical moment there for that age group that just doesn't exist when people are a little bit older.
Exactly. So I think a lot of us have an association with haiku through pedagogy. It is both a way of getting kids to think poetically, giving them something that they can achieve, and getting them to notice aspects of English language in an English language classroom, where syllables.
Yes.
Now we're going to count them, but that means being aware of them. And I can say, having taught poetry to college students, like introductory to poetry, that many of them arrive. Some of them are English as a second language, fair enough.
Sure.
But still, even the ones who are native speakers who went through a Canadian English language classroom still did not really understand syllables, did not really understand stressed syllables, which are important in English language poetry traditions, and needed to sit back and think about this. Counting syllables is a good way to do it. And you can create some reasonably impressive poems from kids by having them do this. It's also why acrostics are very popular, though I think those tend to not get as good results from kids.
No. And the haiku really is something that, I mean, if you have that really short amount of space to convey an idea, you do have to make some very good, you have to make some very just narrow choices to create the image. And even like an 8-year-old can think about the words that they know and write something.
Exactly.
I appreciated that.
And you can have fun websites that help you write haiku.
Because they fight crime?
Sort of like fighting crime. This one is a poem generator that I've got loaded up. And I put some things in because I know we were talking a little bit beforehand about haiku that might be related to, you guessed it,
Donald Pleasence?
Mm-hmm. Were you, I know you were trying to make some of his Blowfield speeches work.
It's so hard. It's so hard, even just with the syllable counting. Although I did find one that I thought would work okay, which was, "This organization does not tolerate failure. Go kill Bond now."
Nice.
The problem, of course, is that the words and the syllables have to break across lines in order to get your 575, but you do get a smattering of the structure, and it's an actual Blofeld quote without having to be too manipulated.
Well, that is fun.
Mhm.
I went to this website, which asks you to fill in a few blanks, so to speak. So it asks you for a time of year or or a season.
Trying to get that whole seasonal, like, nature thing going on.
It asks you for an adjective that describes a time or place, some nouns that you wouldn't expect to find in the same sentence, like frog and chocolate.
Oh, okay.
Which I have definitely encountered those in a sentence before.
Yes. In fact, every time I read Harry Potter.
Exactly. Another adjective and a verb. So I've put in fall, dark, pleasance, water, lonely, and splashes, as a nod to his dark and lonely water PSA that we've talked about many times. Let me click on the Write Me a Poem button, and here it comes. Darkening descend, a lonely pleasance splashes, watching the water.
Oh,
it's pretty good.
That is pretty good, yeah.
So, you can get computers to write haiku in the English style. I probably wouldn't trust them with the Japanese style, but I don't know.
I'm not a native Japanese speaker. There's no way for me to know how well a haiku can be written by a computer. I did find a Donald Pleasence quote, not from his James Bond time, but from his Halloween time that fits better into a haiku, I thought.
Okay, let's hear that.
It is, "You must think me a very sinister doctor. I have a permit."
That's a good twist. That's
I know,
a good haiku twist.
It's because he has a gun. Psst, just so you know.
I like the idea that all haiku should end with an implied, "It's because he has a gun." Old pond, frog jumps in, kersplash. He's got a gun.
Hey everybody, it's time for the Shallow 13.
It's time for the Shallow 13. 13 tiny tidbits about today's experiment, Prince of Space, that we think you will like very much. Go, Charlotte, go!
Our Prince of Space is played by Tatsuo Umemiya. This was one of Tatsuo's first films and began a long career in Japanese cinema, which included films such as World War III Breaks Out, Gang vs. Gang, Delinquent Boss, Impact Prostitution Capital, and Love on a Daily Basis. Tatsuo continued acting until just a few years before his death in 2019.
Tatsuo Umemiya was also in a movie called Bandit vs. Samurai Squad with a guy named Tetsuro Tamba. And Tetsuro Tamba played Tiger Tanaka in a James Bond film called You Only Live Twice, which also had a little role for, you guessed it, Donald Pleasence.
As everyone gathers around the television to watch the Phantom's first announcement, Mike riffs,
Can't believe they're showing Dennis Franz's butt.
Dennis Franz played Detective Andy Sipowicz on 90s cop drama NYPD Blue, and on one daring day in 1994, they showed the actor in the buff, from behind. Emphasis on behind.
This was, of course, highly controversial. While the existence of the butt had been theorized as early as Match Game 73, the revelation that a grown man might have his own butt and that it might be visible on primetime television was a terrifying revelation. Some say America has still not recovered.
This episode has not one, but two riffs about Walter Mondale, the former vice president under Jimmy Carter, former second-place presidential candidate in 1984, and former senator from the great state of Minnesota, was, when this episode came out, wrapping up a 3-year stint as ambassador to Japan under President Clinton.
Mondale's parents thought that both his first and middle names, Walter and Frederick, were a little too much for a kid to be saddled with, even one growing up in the 1930s in Minnesota. So they called him Fritz, which is basically German for Freddy.
As the camera focuses on an extra with great hair and strong cheekbones, Mike cries out.
Protect me, Japanese Fabian.
Fabian was a 50s teen idol with a trademark coif and even stronger cheekbones. He had a few hit songs, the biggest of which was a song I've never heard of called Tiger. And he was in a bunch of movies, none of which I've seen, including one called Dr. Goldfoot and the Girl Bombs. And yet, I know who Fabian is. His hair was just that great.
The two boys in this film hide behind some trees, and Crow describes them as
Junior Samples and Business Boy.
The kid wearing the flannel shirt and overalls is supposed to be Junior Samples, a comedian who starred on the countrified variety show Hee Haw. Business Boy is just a little Japanese kid who wears a suit.
The invading aliens are standing amongst some tall grass, and Crow says,
Oh, those Heaven's Gate people were supposed to meet us here.
Hey, this is a fun one. Heaven's Gate was a San Diego-based cult that coordinated a mass suicide with the approach of the Hale-Bopp comet in March 1997, just a few months before the release of this episode. Topical.
And as some aliens pop out from the ground, Mike and the bots say,
I'm Hard Rock.
I'm Coco.
I'm Joe.
Hard Rock, Coco, and Joe, the Three Little Dwarfs, is a short stop animation film from 1951 that celebrates these three dwarfs who help fly Santa's sleigh each Christmas. Well, except for Joe. Joe's kind of useless, but Santa loves him, so he gets to come along anyways. Anyway, the short became big on Midwestern TV stations, and we'll have a link in the show notes.
The camera pans over Dr. Macken's sleeping body, and Tom says,
A mummified Alf Landon.
Alf Landon was the 1936 Republican presidential candidate. He was an oil man from Kansas, and Franklin Roosevelt handed him his sweet Kansas butt at the polls.
Phantom lets out one of his trademark laughs, and Mike quips,
I have to tell Fang about that. Ha!
Fang was Phyllis Diller's long-suffering, but thankfully fictional, husband, and indeed Phantom's cackle and general sense of fashion owes a lot to the late great Phyllis Diller.
And finally, as the invaders are trying to find Prince of Space, they cover their chicken noses and masks and hide their eyes in dark glasses, leading Mike to say,
It's Garbo.
And indeed, Greta Garbo spent much of her later life as a recluse, wearing large sunglasses to obscure her identity. Although she was perhaps not as much of a recluse as people liked to say. And hey, it's not like she didn't deserve her privacy. Leave Garbo alone.
And that's time. So, our friends from Crankor, with their big chickeny noses, and Phantom especially with his wild mustache that seems to defy physics and gravity. They did look like chickens.
I didn't think they looked like chickens when I first saw them, Chris.
No?
My first impression, Waluigi and Wario. Waluigi and Wario. That's who I thought of immediately. Mostly Wario, because the mustache and the very round face.
But Waluigi is the one with the chickeny nose.
It's true, but this is who I thought of when I looked. I mean, don't get me wrong. They totally have little chicken suits on, and yes, but that's a Wario face.
Yes.
Mixed with Waluigi.
Sure. Weirdly, Mike and the bots don't mention Wario or Waluigi at all, possibly because Waluigi hadn't been invented yet.
But hadn't Wario?
Wario had. So Wario was invented in 1992, or he first was introduced to the world, let's say, for the Game Boy game Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know. I never played that one. I played the original Super Mario Land. It was pretty good.
As I don't play any of the video games that have come up on this show so far, I also did not play that one. But I have played many games with Wario and Waluigi because they're in all of the Mario Karts.
They are.
Which is fantastic. And they're in some of the Super Mario worlds where you can play them as an alternate character. So I appreciate the Wario and the Waluigi.
Yes, well, there were some Mario Karts before Waluigi was invented.
Fair enough.
He came around in the year 2000 to give Wario a partner for Mario Tennis for the N64.
That's why they invented him? I thought maybe he needed a partner in crime for all of his mischievous actions.
Yeah, on the tennis field.
On the tennis court, of course. Because that's where mischief happens.
Yeah.
Actually, wait, we just talked about this in our last episode. Tennis is war.
Yeah.
So, yeah, of course you need a second in command.
Exactly. Yeah, and so he was meant to be the Luigi, the Waluigi, of course. As you probably know where the name Wario comes from.
I mean, I know it's Mario with a W instead of an M. Is it from a different place?
So the word in Japanese, as I understand it, warui, means bad. And so if you've got Mario, it's not a huge jump to make Wario.
That totally makes sense.
Sound a lot like bad. And then you could just put the Wa prefix in front of anything.
Well, and it's awesome because his hat is basically the same as the Mario hat with the M upside down because you got the whole MW thing happening. It's awesome. It works out super well. I didn't even know there was a Japanese language undercurrent for it being Wario instead of just an upside down Mario.
Yes, exactly. Wario is meant to be sort of a topsy-turvy Mario with the M turned upside down to a W and a bit heavier, a bit squarter, he's got a zigzaggy mustache.
And he's got big stamp action whenever he walks, boom, boom, boom. It's awesome.
And then you got Waluigi, and Waluigi comes after we've sort of settled on Luigi being sort of taller and ganglier and having a weird jump mechanic. And so you get to include all that in the sort of spindly, spidery Waluigi. And his symbol is just the L upside down, which looks like nothing. Which is great. Doesn't make any sense, and we love it. Waluigi is one of the few characters in the Mario extended universe that I care at all about.
What? Really?
I don't care about
Rosalina.
Mario. I certainly don't care about Rosalina. Good heavens.
Princess Peach?
Nope, boring. Even Luigi.
Toadie?
Toad? No, I do not care for Toad.
And Toadette?
I definitely don't care for Toadette.
Oh my gosh, how can you not care about these people?
Yoshi's okay, but the only one I really care about is
Bob-omb?
Waluigi. Bob-ombs are okay, Shy Guys are fine.
Okay. So if we go into the naughty people, this is when you start caring about Mario characters?
Yeah, they're much more interesting. Like the Koopa Kids are all great.
All right.
But of the main characters, Waluigi is the only exciting one. That's the one that I want to play in Mario Kart, which I do, and in Smash, which I don't get to because he's been denied access to Smash for some reason.
Justice for Waluigi!
It's so unfair.
Totally.
Everyone cheated.
Next time I cheat.
Oh, he's so
That's my
good.
favorite line.
Anyway, I feel like they should remake this episode just so they can make a lot of Waluigi references.
Oh, see, you don't think that they'll do better riffing. You just want them to riff about Waluigi and Wario.
I think they could do better riffing with Waluigi stuff on it.
I agree. And they could also do something. What else was I thinking they should do some things about? Oh, they should also, instead of just making chicken noises, they should make some more Gonzo references. Because you totally have Gonzo with the enormous nose followed around by a bunch of chickens. And he's ordering them around. They could have been making some Muppet Show references, which they didn't do.
That's true. But
So there you
Gonzo
go.
has the question mark shaped nose. Or hook-shaped nose, however you want to describe it. Which is very different from what Phantom's got.
Indeed. However, it's still Gonzo with some chickens. Well, Chris, I feel like we've talked a lot about this movie that I didn't find all that interesting, but maybe you have a final factoid to share with our listeners?
I do. There's one other thing I want to mention. At some point, we get to see an image of the rocket ship that the scientist is working on that gets destroyed before they get to take off with it. But it's magnificent. It's very flat. It's got sort of a big nose and then these big wide wings that we're seeing from profile.
Is this the one that they riff Church of the Bomb when you see it inside of the background?
That's the second time we see it. The first time we see it, they refer to it as a Modernist Lutheran church.
Oh!
And that's the thing I want to talk about. The Church of the Bomb thing, that's a Planet of the Apes reference. I think we've talked about that before, back when Adam was around. But this, I want to talk about fun Modernist Lutheran architecture that looks not unlike a weird 50s rocket ship.
Emphasis on the word fun here, I suppose?
Some of it's quite fun. I'm going to show you a set of images that Google brings up if you just search for Modernist Lutheran
churches. For those of
churches.
you inside of the listening audience, Chris can do just by turning his computer towards me because we're, spoiler alert, in the same room.
It's
Guess
true.
it's not a spoiler if we told you an hour ago.
Yeah, it's also true.
Oh, look at these. So I'm seeing some things that are looking like very 50s architecture, like the roofs that are just all slanted in one direction and lots of windows, the lit up weird spires. But yeah, lots. Oh, yeah, that one, which looks like a pointed normal curve. It's
yes.
fantastic.
Well, in fact, that might be the one that I wanted to tell you specifically about because
nice.
there is a fantastic Lutheran church in Reykjavik, Iceland, called, and I'm going to get this wrong, Hallgrímskirkja. I could be done better. I apologize for our Icelandic listeners. It is one of the tallest buildings in Iceland.
Oh.
And it is absolutely phenomenal. It was completed in 1986, and there it is.
That is the one that I was pointing out. It does look like a normal curve, except pointed at the top.
Yes.
And you've even got the little braking parts, so it looks like the frequency bar graph that it's moving into a normal curve as you're starting to, proceed toward infinity. Anyway,
normal
it looks
curve
great.
in the sense of a standard bell curve kind of
yes,
thing.
That is the definition of normal curve.
For our non-mathematical
listeners.
Yeah, it also looks a bit like a rocket ship, but with sort of less splendid wings than we saw in the movie.
True enough.
It's a stunning piece of concrete.
Yes, I can't imagine being inside that, though. I mean, I'm looking at the building, and there's one major window that's just above the doorway, and it's probably the height, like double or triple the height of the door. And then it's just a lot more concrete with teeny tiny little battlement windows, and that's it. The rest of it is just solid concrete.
Well, at the very top, you get a few more windows, and you can go up there and look out and look over the city from there, which I did.
Oh.
It's very nice.
It's like being on the tower with the princess in the never-ending story. You can look all over the imaginary realm.
Quite a lot of Iceland is like the never-ending story.
If you've been affected by the issues on this show, if you've written a nice haiku about Donald Pleasence, or if you'd like to ask us anything, get in touch with us. Our website is itsjustashow.com, and we're on Twitter at itisjustashow. We'd love to hear from you. This show is made possible by listeners like you, and like our randomly selected supporter, Lars. Thank you, Lars. For as little as $1 an episode, you can be like Lars and help us research and record this show. You can join us in a friendly Slack where we all hang out and live stream our reactions to new episodes. And you can listen to all our superfan bonus bits. Find out more at itsjustashow.com/Patreon or patreon.com/itsjustashow. And if you want to follow up on anything that was mentioned today, you'll find links in our show notes at itsjustashow.com/episode/119. It's been a super fun ride, Chris, going along with the Prince of Space. Okay, I didn't find it all that super fun, but it was super fun when we got to everybody to cheat. What are we going to be watching next time?
Well, next time for our Halloween episode, we're going to continue in Season 8 and look at Episode 17, The Horror of Party Beach.
This is the episode that would have come right after this one?
Yep.
Oh my gosh, so I get to see if there's going to be Steve Reeves and a lion wrestling match in the Coliseum while it's flooded and we're having naval battles.
Yes, you are. And you'll get to see a host segment in which Mike Nelson is wearing very tiny shorts.
Who wears short shorts? Mike Nelson wears short shorts?
Mike wears the short shorts.
Are they going to be referencing the Nair ad?
I don't know. I've never seen this episode.
Oh, well, I guess we'll all learn together next time.
I guess many of our listeners will have seen this one. It is quite popular, and it's got horror and party beach. So how can it go wrong?
Yeah, two great tastes that taste great together.
Exactly. But until then...
Protect me, Japanese Fabian!
Oh, we forgot to talk about all the great Chippendale furniture inside the modernist futuristic spaceman's home. Oh, well, next time. Take it away, Theme Squad.
Oh, no, it didn't do well, did it?